Welcome to the Hard to Kill podcast, the official podcast of the Hard to Kill program, the world's leading program for driven individuals looking to gain direction and momentum, where we aim to break down the complex, multifaceted and holistic factors of human performance and optimization. Both on the program and on this podcast, we will be discussing and excavating everything pertaining to psychological resilience, physical robustness, and leading by example with discipline and tenacity to create a culture of winning, especially in the turbulent, frenetic, and high-tempo world of the ambitious individual. This is Marc, the creator, senior DS, and head coach of the Hard to Kill program. Let's get stuck straight into it.
So today we obviously have I don't want to say infamous, we have Staz.
I'll be cool with this, mate.
Anthony Stazicker on the podcast. Firstly, mate, I want to say, well, thank you for this, for the setup, for inviting me down, well, for entertaining us, having this conversation. Something I've been enormously looking forward to. We've got an absolute plethora of things that we're going to cover off. But yeah, firstly, I want to start by saying thank you, mate, because I think you've got so much value that you can bring to everyone in your audience that maybe hasn't heard this side of things yet, and definitely my audience. So I think it's going to be cool, mate.
Appreciate it, mate, and welcome to ThruDark HQ. And I'm probably going to start with a thank you as well, mate. Thank you to you, Marc. I think for those that don't know, obviously I've had quite a long military career. My body has been through the mill, probably more than most. I'm only 38 years young at the minute, but I feel like I've got the body of an 80-year-old. But I think that's the nature of the job. So I was involved in like an IED explosion. It's kind of compressed my spine. That coupled with lifting, stupid heavy weights at a young age, incorrect form. So I've got a lot of issues with my lower back, herniated disc. I think I sent you that
screenshot, yeah.
The screenshot of the scans and stuff. And it flares up every now and again. And since sort of transitioning into the civilian world in 2018, my training's had to change and adapt as well. I've always been sort of heavy, go hard, go home sort of style training, just ego style really. But having flare-ups a lot of the time with my lower back, and it's been a real fucking issue for me. And, since training, and especially now since doing jiu-jitsu for the kind of the last sort of 18 to 20 months, I'm having no end of issues and problems. And I've seen physios, doctors, I've looked at loads of stuff online, and I spoke to you, obviously I saw your stuff online through social media, reached out to you, and you very, very kindly sort of taken your own time out there, sent me some amazing videos. Not only did you send me sort of rehab and sort of ways to mitigate that risk and that issue of the lower back pain and issues that I was getting. You explained everything as well, really well. You gave me a few exercises to start with. And honestly, mate, I'm not just saying it because we're on the podcast. I've said this to a few people. My lower back issue is still there. I know it's there. It's herniated. I can't get rid of that. It's about managing that. And since implementing the exercise and the stuff that you sort of asked me to do, it's been like it's a tenfold sort of difference in how I can now train and live my fucking daily life as well. Because having to peel myself out of a long car drive, or even picking my kids up or my dog, things the back would go, and I'd be in a world of pain for a week, 2 weeks on naproxen and all that good stuff. So mate, so thank you for helping on that stage as well, and also for the rehab sort of side of things. Mate, as well.
It's genuinely a pleasure, and in the world that we currently live in and everything is commoditized, it's really underestimated how fulfilling it is that what I have learned and the things that operate in my mind, when you're able to articulate out to a human and it changes their life, you're like, fucking hell, that's the most fulfilling thing that I can receive. So mate, it's good to know. And I think everyone listening to or watching this podcast, whichever medium you're looking through, can resonate with how claustrophobic and infuriating and debilitating back pain is, and that's without the plethora of punishment your body's had through obviously your former career. So to know firsthand how it feels, and we've all lifted like a twat when we were younger. We've all fucking done it.
Yeah,
we've all still do. So yeah, to know that you now can continue with jiu-jitsu, which is something we're going to talk about today, and something I know you're so passionate about, is really fulfilling for me as a coach.
Thank you, mate. Now I think that one of the main words, my main takeaway to your point there, is frustration. Yeah. Removing that frustration and allowing me to then train and continue with my life as well, pain-free, has been a huge fucking benefit, mate. So thank you.
And pain-free is a key point there as well. A lot of people, through perceptions of your military persona and the Hard to Kill, it's very easy for people to think, it's all about lifting really heavy weights and running really fast and climbing a mountain. It's like, right, but you're making a trade-off and you're paying a price further down the line. And it's about thinking, not to say we shouldn't push ourselves and find our limits, but now starting to think, when you get late 30s, 40s, right, I still want to be able to do these things when I'm 20 years down the line, and changing the ethos so that you're not, fucking hanging out every single day.
It's a good point, because I don't know whether whether it's it has to be a mental shift, between you understanding your body, listening to your body, and understanding now what you can do as opposed to what you used to be able to do, and not being so harsh on yourself as well and judging yourself by your current standard in terms of what you used to be able to do. And that was quite difficult for me to switch through, to make that transition mentally more than anything, and physically as well. So I'm now that guy in the gym that's doing all those weird banded walk-arounds and exercises. And I remember in our office up here, I think I said this to you last night, it's kind of a mezzanine with an open plan floor, and where I was walking, you had me doing the...
Sack swingers.
Sack swingers. Basically, I'm wearing a weighted belt with a chain on, and it's got the kettlebell hanging between my nuts. I was kind of walking up and down. I think Tommy, the brand director, was like, what the fuck are you doing, mate? But it's stuff like that that's really helps them.
Yeah, 100%. So, mate, we're going to get into a lot of what we've just very quickly glanced over today, and we'll go through it in some degree of logical sense. I've tried to make order of the chaos here. People can see like my fucking scattered notes everywhere. But what I'd love to do to start us at the beginning is tell us a little bit about yourself, mate. Tell us about you as a person before military career, before ThruDark. Tell us a little bit about yourself, mate.
All right, mate. I do like to waffle, and I think we're probably three coffees deep, which is never a good thing. But long story, hopefully short, but long story long. So Anthony Staz Stazicker, 38 years old. I was born, I want to say raised for the first part of my life up to about the age of 7 in Wigan, up in Lancashire. My parents split up when I was about 7. So that was my sort of first kind of, looking back now, trauma, I guess. I've got an older brother, Andrew, who's a couple of years older than me. We then relocated with my mum. She remarried to Nottingham or Mansfield. So we went through that kind of transition of changing schools. We've got now the people with a funny accent. And started kind of that transition into primary school, then into secondary school, which was fine. I've always been quite kind of outgoing, sporty. So I kind of got myself fully stuck into, I had to sort of transition from rugby into football. So I got really stuck into football, really enjoyed that. School was okay. I enjoyed school, but I enjoyed more than anything the people in school and those relationships and having a laugh, I guess, and a crack like most people. I was never really that educationally driven. I wasn't a rebel or anything by any means either. So kind of getting stuck into school, and then my first real kick in the balls was when my mum suddenly passed away. It was a brain hemorrhage. Luckily at the time, for me and my brother, we were visiting my dad for the weekend up in Wigan. So we had that kind of phone call Sunday. So we'd left on the Friday, seeing everything's fine. She was pretty much the same age as myself, or 36 years old, or 33, bad maths. But on the Sunday having that call, and my dad sort of sitting us down and coming back in, and our world was just flipped upside down at that point. And I remember going straight to hospital in Mansfield. Sort of my mum was in an induced coma, and at that point, sort of not really understand. I'm 11 years old at this point, and just thinking, what the fuck is going on? She was in an induced coma for, I want to say, a week, and then the decision was made to turn the life support off. Now at that stage, 11, I'm just transitioning into secondary school. That was quite a hard pill to swallow. And I think, in hindsight now and looking back, at the time I didn't really deal with it. We're not kind of where we are right now in terms of mental health and support for people and for kids, I guess. Certainly nothing was offered, or there was nothing kind of... It was strange because at that point, our stepfather was a bit of a shitbag, and thankfully my nan and granddad, my mum's parents, relocated, gave up everything, sacrificed everything, moved down, sold their place up there, bought a place in Mansfield, and me and my brother moved in with my grandparents. So we've had this going on. We're now transitioning into secondary school, and now I'm living with my grandparents, which is fucking odd, and they're quite old school. My granddad's a great man, quite old school values, and now looking back, that set me up for success. It was brilliant. But at the time, you're kind of two generations kind of like skipping through here, and it's difficult as a young kid. You also don't want that pressure. You don't want that. You don't want the eyes on you. You just want to transition through life and through school, and you just want to get on with things. You want to keep your head down. And I felt like, for me, it was a real negative sort of dark cloud cast over me. But I'm super thankful to my grandparents for raising, obviously, me and my brother. They've done an incredible job. I think, again, looking back with the kind of man that my granddad was, and the values and things that he instilled in me were fantastic. So forever grateful for that. And what did it leave? How did it leave me feeling? It left me with more questions and answers. I'd say. Me and my brother didn't really talk about it. I didn't really talk about it to my dad or to my grandparents. I just kind of got on with it and dealt with it in my own mind. But again, looking back, there was a lot of anger there. I already had quite a spark in me anyway. It's probably fire in my belly, but it just kind of just fueled that fire more for me. So I then put most of my efforts and energy into sport. So football, very quickly began throwing all of my energy and effort into that, and quite quickly was picked up. I was playing for Mansfield Town from the age of kind of 13 up to 16 YTS level. I was playing for, obviously the school, the captain of the county team, bits and pieces, and then went on to sort of represent England schoolboys. Didn't make it as most failed footballer stories. I used to love motocross. Was racing motocross at weekends when I shouldn't have been. Dislocated my knee quite badly, and then subsequently had an operation. Kind of fixed the problem, but didn't. I remember coming back on the first game and my knee going again, and I just remember sort of hitting the floor in frustration because I knew that was my chances gone. And at the time, I think I was at Fulham as well, so everything was lining up for a football career for me at that point. But yeah. But to a point as well, I'm not by any stretch of imagination saying that I would have been representing England in the World Cup at Qatar.
Opposite, like plan B of Rooney.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
So what happened then, again, I had put mentally all my eggs into that basket. So I had to kind of readjust my focus and my purpose. I ended up going to college. I loved engines, loved bikes, loved cars. I wanted to do an engineering degree. I spent, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks at work. What do they call it?
Work experience.
Work experience, mate. I did it in a horrible local garage in Mansfield. But I loved it, all the engine bits and pieces and get my hands dirty and the smells and everything. I loved that. However, I was an absolute biff with my results. I got a D in maths, so when I turned up on the day and was kind of, I'm here for the engineering course, it would have meant me, because of my school results, it would have meant me having to do an extra year on top of an already 2-3 year course, and that's 17 years old. A year seems like forever, doesn't it? So I didn't do that, and then I kind of looked at it as an open day at college, looked across the fucking hall, and I think it was just the chicks everywhere. I was like, what's that over there? And it was the sports science department. So I trundled over there, and it seemed quite natural anyway. I was obviously quite sporty, still playing football. So I enrolled on a BTEC National Diploma in sports science at West Notts College. I did that for 2 years, got back into the football, then I represented British colleges at football, and then I was scouted by an American university, offered a full scholarship to play at University of South Carolina, filled all the forms in, excited, and plane ticket was bought, met the kiddie from Hull that I was going to be kind of living with, going down that route, got all excited again. And I filled in some amateur eligibility forms incorrectly as a biff. They deemed me to be a professional in their amateur league because I kind of answered honestly, as I thought correctly at the time. Have you ever received royalties? Have you ever been associated with professional clubs? And that's obviously that's quite a natural thing in the UK system. Yeah. So I couldn't play. That kind of got literally 2 weeks before I was flying out to America. That would have been probably 3 years out there. That would have been a fantastic opportunity. So again, it was just another kick in the tits. So then I had to readjust. Well, what am I going to do now? Didn't really think much beyond, at that age, you're not really looking past a week, really, are you? So what else interested me? The gym, working out. So I did a gym instructor's course, personal training course through college, literally joined a council-run gym in my local village. And I kind of worked there for a couple of years. I was a lifeguard as well. So I was doing kind of lifeguard stuff, working in the gym. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the phys side of it, more from a personal benefit than anything. But sort of 2 years or a year into that was still sort of thinking, is this it? How long do I want to do this for? So I started looking at other options, and the military was sort of popping up as well. There was, I think, Iraq was kicking off at the time. So for me, I'd sort of started looking or scratching the surface of the military, and as for myself, I've always kind of pushed myself. I always wanted to be the best. So for me, it was what is the best or the hardest kind of military training, and arguably the Marines or the Paras. By chance, when I went into the Armed Forces Career Office in Nottingham, the guy was a Marine, so I enrolled onto the Marines. Off I went. I had that refocus, that repurpose again, that kind of mission, if I want of a better word, in my mind, and something to really aim towards and train for. So I got the bit between my teeth, and really sort of, as I do with everything, went all in, all chips in. So joined the Marines at 21 years old, 2005, 897 Troop. I went straight through training, obviously brushing over sort of 32 weeks here very quickly. I think the main takeaways from me were, one, I felt at home immediately around that. I found a kinship, brotherhood, people that were like-minded. It was a welcome distraction. It was a new focus for me, as I'd suggested. And I loved the physical side of it as well. I loved the fact that I could push myself physically, mentally. It was challenging. There was new things happening daily. I was learning new skills. I was applying these new skills and forming kind of tight bonds with the guys in the troops as well. Probably the main points are I'd kind of started and finished as an original, as they would say. So I thankfully wasn't injured. I went all the way through. I passed in December 2005. I was awarded the King's Badge, which is the kind of top recruit, top brown noser, and also the PT medal. That was the main one that I was going for. I was interested in the PT side of things, the physical side. So I was the kind of fittest guy in the troop. So I had the sort of fastest times. I'd kind of been consistently showing up in terms all the way through training as one of the kind of front runners, or the front runner for the troop. So I was happy with that, and I left there. Beginning again, went on Christmas leave, January 2006, turned up to 40 Commando in Taunton. There's some familiar faces that people might know or have heard or seen of today. And looking back, it was a real strong kind of group that I joined. You know, we had Ant Middleton in the same company, Louis, the co-founder of ThruDark, and I think 3 or 4, maybe 5 people from that troop alone went on to successfully pass Special Forces as well. So I went on my first tour. I was only a month or 2 months long into Kabul, a steep learning curve. As a Marine, and at that stage in the Marines, that was my first introduction to Special Forces, and in particular SBS. Obviously, you know about these guys and you know about Special Forces to some extent. It's kind of like a myth, but that was my first time that I'd seen these guys. They kind of rolled through the checkpoint into the camp that we were stagging on or guarding on the main gate. And they kind of rolled in looking different, looked like cowboys, long hair, long beards, all the cool kit, denim jeans on, flannel shirts, all that kind of stuff that we've seen, and immediately spiked my interest. So off the back of that tour, went back into 40, then I went up to Fleet Protection Group on the west coast of Scotland. That's the nuclear deterrent. And then for me, it was, okay, what's next? What can I do to push myself within the Marines? But in the back of my mind, thinking about maybe selection. But bearing in mind, I've only been in the Marines for 2 years now. The other things that interested me were being a PTI. That really appealed to me. But I think at the time, I don't know if it's changed now, you needed to serve at least 4 years and had to be a corporal. So there's other sort of barriers to entry into being a PTI. So I enrolled onto the Royal Marine Sniper course. It's arguably the hardest kind of infantry course that you can do. Highly regarded. 10, 12 weeks long course. Back to Lympstone. Successfully passed that. And at that stage, I guess the seed was set. That was also, I think, for me, a test to see if my soldiering ability and everything was where I thought it was and where it should be to enable me to enroll myself onto Joint UK Special Forces selection in 2008, which I did. So off I went training again. This was another thing for me to refocus and then to really kind of aim high. Was Special Forces. I didn't know too much about it. There's obviously a lot of things going on internally within the units, and generally it's people that have failed selection, and it's probably a point to note about how and who to pick information from, and then how you, I guess, process that, the information that you're given from people that have failed and why they fail, and ultimately not allow that to, I guess, change your perception or how you would like to do things for yourself, if that makes sense. We can touch on that in a bit. So off I went on to selection. Again, this was in 2008. So summer selection, it was absolutely red hot on the hills. Unfortunately, we had one guy die, and a lot of people were having overheating issues. It was, we're in Wales, of all places, but it was, I just remember it being ridiculously hot, for obviously where we are and at the time as well. So managed to get to the end of the hills phase, and that's that kind of the physicality and the map reading style side of things ticked off the 4 weeks there. Then I went into the jungle, which again focuses more on teamwork around a kind of personal soldiering skills and abilities. 5-6 weeks there, successfully passed that phase, and then into the resistance to interrogation stuff, probably similar to stuff people have seen on TV, kind of, but not
stylized version on TV.
Stylized version, yeah, absolutely. And for me, that was probably the biggest kick in the nuts. It's not really spoken about. You don't know what to expect, and by that stage your body and your mind is pretty fatigued, is a kind way of putting it. That's probably 3 stone wet through, and then the next thing you're into this kind of phase of running around for 5 days and nights, on the run, being chased, and little to no food or water, and then straight into 36 hours of interrogation. And then at the end of that, past that, probably by the skin of my teeth, and then you're into kind of the weapons tactics phases, blah blah blah, and continuation training. I then joined the SBS down in Poole, and then we kind of do our own sort of pre-selection stuff, or your boating and diving courses, and then off you go into the squadron. I joined one of the Sabre squadrons, and I was pretty much straight out and deployed into Afghanistan. I think looking back now, that period, that 10 years, so I had 3 years in the Marines, and then my more formative years 10 years were spent in Special Forces in the SBS, and that really shaped me as an individual. It was probably the busiest sort of combat action of any time. Looking back now, it was intense. It was just back-to-back tours or training. If you weren't on tour, you were training to go back out onto tour as well. So I kind of did 3 or 4 tours there out in Afghan in quite quick succession. All the time, upskilling. I'm being demolition trained and just multifaceted as the guys are within Special Forces as well. So very quickly condensing 10 years of Special Forces kind of career there, but super thankful. I think looking back, I was surrounded by some immense individuals, some incredible people, that I kind of moved into that world, so bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I was 24 at the time. And then, just surrounded by incredible people that had done incredible things, but were super humble and were willing to kind of pass the kind of information and their learnings onto myself as well. So, very quick sort of condensed version of me within the SBS. I kind of finished my time as a sergeant, the chief sniper instructor as I left, and forever grateful. I had an amazing time. It wasn't all doom and gloom. It wasn't all bad. Even the operational stuff. When it was bad, it was obviously very bad. But high highs and low lows probably. But for the most part, it was an incredible, kind of really formed and shaped the person that I am. So it's I look back with nostalgia and with good memory. But for me, leaving in 2018, I guess it was a strange time to leave. I was a sergeant. I was kind of flying in my career, doing really well. And for those that don't know, you sign an open engagement contract of 22 years in the military, and you can you hand your notice in when you want to leave, and you have a year's return of service that you can do, roughly speaking. And for me, I was kind of 12 years in. I was at my half pension point, 13 years, and I just thought within that 10 years, I'd done so much stuff. I'd crammed so much stuff in, and I'd ticked, for me personally, a lot of my boxes. Obviously had some close shaves as well, looking back, and my personal situation had changed as well. It had already destroyed my kind of first relationship, my marriage, and looking now forward into what I wanted to do and where I wanted to head towards. For me, I wanted to kind of close that chapter on a real high and be thankful and grateful. I was looking at other people that were doing the jobs that I would be potentially moving into, and it didn't really inspire me. You're moving further and further away from the pointy end, more into administration and training roles, which is a massive requirement. But for me, it didn't really fill my sails. So the wind was out of my sails a little bit. Louis, who's Louis Tinsley, the co-founder of ThruDark here, similar situation, obviously within Special Forces, a real good friend of mine, and we were actually parachuting out in America at the time and talking. Himself personally, his situation was slightly different in so much that he was injured. There's a common thread here: lower back injury, and he was getting medically discharged. So his hand was forced. He had to leave. And at that stage, we started talking about, well, what could life outside of this world look like? And it's not a decision that you take lightly. You've considering everything that you've put, mind, body, soul into getting to that place, to essentially reach the top of the military kind of echelons and being tier 1 and at the tip of the spear and all that kind of good stuff. It was a difficult decision to make because it's not just you involved now. At this stage, I'd met somebody else as well, and for me, it was the best job in the world, but the most selfish job as well. So it was all me when I'm away. And I think looking back at it, I think you spend about 9 months of the year out of your own bed. So if you're, again, operations or you're training or you're away, it takes a toll on personal relationships as well. So at that point, we made a decision to kind of look into options. The natural transition I'd suggest is obviously private security, well-paid jobs, which is what a lot of the guys do. Obviously the skill sets transition quite well into that. There's a lot of people already working in those jobs, so it's quite easy to kind of move into those roles, tickle elbows and get really kind of well-paid jobs and interesting jobs as well, in the Far East, etc. Which we did when we left. We kind of cherry-picked jobs. We worked security, kindly offered work for the kind of NFL, NBA and all those kind of good stuff. And for me, that was cherry-picked work that should have really been the best stuff. But when we left, we were kind of thinking, fuck, I don't want to do this for, let's say, 10 years, 15 years. So we were thinking, just as we were leaving, about kind of other options and talking about what inspired us, what kind of interested us. And it was, I guess, bringing it back slightly so that you have the military and the Marines, and then you have the Special Forces guys, and you're kind of the cowboys, you're kind of the outcast guys, and the budgets are different and they look different. You get all the best kit, equipment, weapons, optic, everything is better. And for us, we were sort of provided some of the best clothing and kit and equipment, but we were always quite critical of how it was performing still. I'm thinking, I think we can make kind of changes here and tweaks, and why have they put this here, and this isn't fit for purpose in this instance, and blah, blah, blah. So off the back of that, we thought, and I think you need an element of naivety when whatever you're doing. You know, I was naive when I joined the military, naive when I put myself forward for selection, and then naive again moving into business, thinking, oh, how hard can this be? And you know, you need that element to kind of, otherwise I think looking back you wouldn't put yourself through it, and I'm glad for that. But we then started looking into options and clothing and ThruDark, and I guess what starts out as a lifestyle business and brand for us was, well, what do we like doing? We like being outdoors. We what's currently on the market, what's wrong with it, what don't we like, how can we tweak it and change it for what we want, so it's fit for purpose for who we are, and it kind of transcends everything that we believe in as well. So we wanted to bring over a lot of our ethos and the things and learnings that we had from Special Forces and everything, and really moving to this world. And we at the time were, you know, doing the usual things. In my front room, I think we had a long-term borrowed whiteboard from the military, and we still got pictures of that as well in terms of planning and prepping, and again those transitional skills from the military. What we were good at was planning, you know, and we planned ThruDark out like a military operation almost, with a timeline, what it would look like, what it would feel like, SWOT analysis to the best of our ability at the time. And off we went. Louis got his balls in his hands. He flew out to fucking China to a massive convention in Guangzhou. Was just running the floor. It's a huge convention. It's probably twice the size of Bournemouth. It's huge. So he's running around. I'm on comms with him. At the time I was still serving, about to leave. He was kind of leaving. He's on gardening leave, and he's sending me stuff back. You know, I'm speaking to these guys, suppliers, factories. But at the time, it's such a fucking difficult job. You know, trying to get your foot in the door with people. You're coming with an idea. You're a business, but you're not a fucking business. You know, we didn't have a website. We had no social media bits and pieces as well. So we kind of left and went, fuck it, we're all chips in, let's go for it. If we're going to do it, let's go for it, you know. And we did, and then we started out, and again, we can jump in and out of this as well, so I don't get too carried away. But I think, yeah, for me and Louis, I think we needed it as well at the time. Guys that do leave the military, it is an echo chamber. It's a good echo chamber within, you know, the SBS. And I think for me personally, I can only speak for me, but I attached a lot of my being and my self-worth to who I was. You know, I'm Staz, I'm fucking Special Forces, and that was it. And it's not until you leave that world, that echo chamber, into the big wide world, and people generally don't give a fuck. And that was quite hard to deal with, you know. But also there's the other added layer of trying to get things done to the same standard that you were used to within the military, and relying on people, because you could rely on people. Well, granted, the situations are different, and you know, but for us it was hard to kind of manage that, and then it was just me and Louis as well, and we were fucking doing everything. You know, it was you have to. It's no different from anybody starting any business. You're plate spinning, and business for me is all about problem solving. Some problems are more difficult than others, clearly, but that's something we were very good at. We're very quickly problem solve, problem solution. We're quite logical in that approach. That's not saying we didn't make a shitload of mistakes, because we did. We always do. Looking back now, you
can't. To be successful in business, you can't fear inefficiency. You know, if you look at all the best businesses, any business that anyone would aspire to grow to be part of, to be associated with, is where it's at, because it's failed forward frequently and like all the fucking time, and just fucked up. Well, what's the new iteration? Go again, and it just happens.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the same with every aspect of life as well, but business in particular, because you can only, I think I mentioned it before, you can only do the best you can do with what you know at that time, with the resource you have at that time, with the contacts that you have at that time, with the money you have at that time. And it's an ever evolving process, you know, business, and that Kaizen philosophy. We're constantly, you know, you see it in our products now. You know, what are we, 5 years into ThruDark, and you know, looking in here, it's huge. I joked the other day walking in, like, who the fuck are all these people in the office? Because at the start it was me and Lou. We did everything, you know, and we very quickly, you know, when we were in the military and Special Forces, we didn't have personal Instagram, Facebook accounts and bits and pieces. So, you know, and we very quickly kind of found our own swim lanes. Louis very good at the production side of things, and the clothing and the factories and everything else, and the operations. And I was just the marketing, that kind of sales, the elbow tickling, getting people in the room, that kind of stuff. And then we obviously crossed over quite a lot, and we still do today. So yeah, off we went, mate, on our merry way. And thankfully we were introduced to, after a fair few horrendous samples and comedy samples, looking back now, introduced to an amazing British designer, Jeff Griffin. Jeff has his own clothing range going on as well, based down in Devon at the minute at Loveland Farm. But he's also pulled in to help other brands. He's just done an amazing collaboration with Supreme, for example, works with his own brand Griffin and Woolrich and some other high-end fashion brands. So Jeff was very kind to us, brought us in. He loved the military anyway. He loves that kind. He's got a lot of ties with the military in his family and personally, and there's a lot of military influence in his designs and stuff anyway. So I think when me and Louis turned up at his eco retreat for the first time, it was a surreal meeting, really. And I think we caught him at a really good time as well. I think he just liked us as well as people. We kind of,
people by people.
Yeah,
it's important to remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of went away from that meeting thinking, geez, have we even got a shot at this guy? He's a great British, amazing British designer, and why would he fucking, bother his ass with us? And it's just a headache for him, I guess. But he did. He pulled us in and flew us out to Milan, to Italy, introduced us to an amazing factory, to the same factory we still use to this day. And off we went on this fucking magical carpet ride of sampling and everything else and websites. And we then moved at this stage. There's obviously a lot of things happening in conjunction with this at the same time. I had a personal friend of mine, Steve Clark, who's the founding investor of ThruDark, a local guy to us here. We were friends first and foremost. And I kind of really didn't understand what he did, but we'd always just been out boozing and eating, and he knew what we did and that we were leaving. And I think we're probably, as all these good plans formulate, 10 pints deep. He was like, what are you guys up to? What are you chatting about? Obviously me and Louis were quite energetic and speaking about what we're passionate about, what we had planned. And we went back the next day, gave a bit of a presentation on kind of what we thought ThruDark could be and look like and where it would sit and everything else. And he invested, and what a journey that's been to begin with as well. So shout out to Steve and a big thank you there. Yeah, but it's been crazy, setting up websites. He took us under his wing, Steve, into his office, as a local office in Poole, put us in the corner office, just me and Louis, first little shelf, got things on, getting super excited. Back in the day, we got an order, one order a week, I'll pack it, I'll do it, all this kind of stuff, and the comedy and everything else. But it was amazing, and it's still amazing now, looking back.
Those are days you look back on, and I, to draw a parallel, I can remember when I first started really moving into business, and I sometimes find myself like looking back and cherishing those days of when you were just fucking grafting. You had a to-do list as long as your arm, but you loved every minute of it, and you were fucking 12, 14 hours deep, and you couldn't wait to get up and do it again. Even though it felt like it had no real traction, it had no real momentum, you had just fucking energy.
Not enough hours in the day, and you're just, you're doing everything as well, and you're plate spinning, aren't you? Problem solving, and you're trying to get everything else up and running. And we were friends of the brand with Bremont Watches, and they very kindly offered their Mayfair boutique store for our grand launch of ThruDark back in 2018, in May. And at the time we had 3 products. Bearing in mind we're just approaching summer, we had an Arctic Parker, typical, and the hybrid jacket, which is still a product now, and the Zodiac jacket is still a product now, a staple product. And I remember driving on the way to Bremont, and tech issues, the website wasn't even launched. We're speaking to the web guy, Louis doing his stuff, I'm speaking to the website guy, like, we're doing this launch today, we're officially launching on Instagram, social, we've done all the shout, the push, the countdown effectively to this grand launch, and the website was just not working. And then literally it was just as we're pulling up to their boutique store in Mayfair, it was got the call, the website, right, we're good, we're live, fucking brilliant, quick change, and off we were into the launch of ThruDark, 3 products and maybe some t-shirts and a cap. And then fast forward again very quickly through probably the best part of 4.5, 5 years to kind of where we are today. And I think we're 22 to 24 staff now, and it's been an incredible journey. Yeah,
mate, it's been, and now we are sat here looking over the warehouse full of all your stock, the team cutting about doing things. And for me, coming in as an absolute outsider, being in the field of business and how I aspire to cultivate a culture within the Hard to Kill directing staff, and seeing how your guys communicate with one another, do anything for one another, how they've communicated with me, made me feel part of that family. That community is an absolute testimony to how you and Louis have obviously created everything here. And it's fucking brilliant to see, because I believe that obviously people by people, but narratives are really important. And all of that has come not from, let's manipulate this to look this way on social media, or let's not try and create a story. It's been internal. It's what you've curated as the culture you've got within the company. And I perceive that's what we see. That's what we receive on the other end of when we're on Instagram, when we see these fucking videos, like that's what we're feeling. It is that culture that obviously we want to aspire to be part of, and there's a lot of that I want to unpack through what you've just spoke about, right through from, plan A not going to plan in earlier years, but even more recently in what you've just said, talking about tech packs and design and iterations and Kaizen. I think something that I've definitely been naive about, and I hold my hand up to that, and I think maybe all of us are, because we live in a world where we expect everything immediately, is actually having been here and looked at some of the samples you've got and what you've got going on. The level of attention to detail, mate, is absolutely like uncomparable. Anyone who's watching or listening to this, sincerely, like we were speaking today about probably a couple of millimeters either side of a bit of stitching that can hold something in place or not be there. So that's really the level of attention to detail that's going into making sure these garments are the fucking best in the world at what they do, and they don't just look the part, they can perform, based on the experience that you and Louis have had and other guys that you've spoken to who've contributed to that creative process. It's all internal. It's all that culture that you've curated and really just built, mate, and it's fantastic to see as a business.
Thank you, mate. There's a few points there that we'll touch on. I think the first one is, if you would ask me what the key to success is, with business, and you've touched on it there, is people. I hate saying resource. I'm not referring to people as resource, but people. If you can surround yourself with the right people that are engaged, they're hooked into the bigger picture of why they're here, they're enthused to come into work, they feel like they're part of that community, as we did at work as well. It's to some element in the military, it's queen and country, but it's not. It's the guy to your left and your right. The thing that the lengths that you're willing to go to, and that's what we've tried to bring across here to the culture within ThruDark as well. And we are immensely fortunate and thankful for the people that have crossed our paths. Also people externally of the business as well that we've been introduced to. But the people up there right now, I'm looking up there because I can sort of see into the office. But we're surrounded by some incredible people. The next bit I think is authenticity. Which you touched on slightly about looking from the outside, looking into ThruDark. And I think you can't blag a blagger, and I think you cannot. People see through bullshit. They absolutely do. They'll smell it out. And if your business isn't built on authenticity and being real, and there's only so long you can fake it. There's only so long you can wear a mask.
You can't do it for 5 years, mate. Yeah.
No, exactly, exactly. And I think what people liked about ThruDark, especially from the feedback that we get directly, and has been that authenticity from me and Louis, but also that the designing, the development, and the testing of the gear is me and Louis, and the wider team now as we've grown. And I think that really resonated with people. We were open, we were honest, quite raw on the social media platforms, and people could see us talking through design, through development, and we're out testing. We're not giving it to other people. And it's worth noting, each and every one of our products, they're not off-the-shelf products. It's not something that we see and go, that'll work. Let's just bang a ThruDark logo on that and off we mark it up and go, which is what a lot of fucking brands do. Yeah. A lot of fucking brands do. And I know more now, being in this world, and Louis and everybody else, we know how people are doing it. And it's sad to see, really, because... And then back to my third point and final point is around product. We built ThruDark around product. Louis saying it's ready when it's ready, and we get hounded constantly. When's this coming back in, or when's this development ready? And the answer is it's ready when it's ready. We are not bound to release products, from seasonality, and as it grows and gets bigger, that constraint does squeeze slightly, but. For us, we have to sort of sit down, look at a product, try it, test it, and then look each other in the eyes and say, are we happy with this product? Would we put our names to it? Would we wear it? And that goes through that process, mate. And the product has to be absolutely right, absolutely bang on, you know. And I think people they feel that, and it resonates with people as well.
Yeah, because if you were to rush it purely with a finite mentality of, let's keep other people happy, let's look to push profit margins this quarter, so on and so forth, and then you get people whose kit's falling apart, it's going to be detrimental to the long-term vision of everything you've got going on here. And you're probably in agreement here, you're still so early in your journey of what you have the potential to be, and ThruDark rightly will get that success that it deserves. But with regards to the industry and people white labeling stuff, it's again one of the frustrations that I have in the coaching space is a lot of people just build a system, build a sales page, stick a fucking logo on it, bang it out, replicate, reproduce, and so on and so forth. Now, ultimately, we can't stand in the rain and complain it's fucking raining. We can only do what we can do, which is get an umbrella and crack on and do our thing, and hopefully try and educate just by purely inspiring and engaging and delivering to other people, which I think is what you've got absolutely right. And you're doing that by being product based, and in the Hard to Kill, we're doing it by being product based. If like, look, let's look at the outcomes rather than how fucking flashy it is. So now what I wanted to do was kind of reverse back through some of the stuff you spoke about and just touch on those key threads that have run throughout, because obviously you had an illustrious and an enormously successful career in the military, but actually you were starting to learn lessons that formulate that even as a youngster, even when plan A failed, when the knee went on the motocross track and then you weren't able to pursue that goal, and then with not being able to get into university in America through just a formality, it was just that capability, and you probably didn't know at the time, you're not really conscious in that age as a fucking teenager, you don't really know your ass from your elbow, but you were just persevering. And that is ultimately the ethos of a Hard to Kill, and what we're all about is that plan A rarely works, plan B sometimes works, but you normally end up on an iteration of like plan G. You're like, okay, cool, let's fucking push forward to this now. And that's fantastic. So you addressed that trauma was something that happened to you early in your life, and again, you wouldn't have been conscious of that, and you've been self-aware enough to realize that could have been influencing the way you've made decisions later in life, and you've addressed and dealt with that. And all I'm trying to do here is draw parallels to everyone who's watching or listening this and say, look, like plan A rarely works. Don't get upset about it. Just get back up.
You're right, mate. And it manifests itself in different ways as well. Looking back now through that lens, having the ability to look back. And again, you only know what you know. But as a kid, trauma and different things happening. Everybody thinks trauma, it's a deep, complicated subject of which I'm not an expert, but I can only speak from kind of my personal circumstances and situations. I've seen how it's affected people in the military, close friends and everything else, but also people external of the military as well. And I think we are in a better space, there's lots of literature out there now and amazing podcasts and people far better, more well-versed than myself to talk about this in more depth. But yeah, I think things happen to you. I'm not a great believer in things happen for a reason and all that kind of nonsense and bits and pieces. But what I want to ask you as well and link back in is, I think one of my kind of superpowers in some respect is I'm not a massive overthinker. Now, don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean, you've got to pinch of salt here, because I think deeply about things, and I think about things obviously that matter to me and that influence me and people around me. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I kind of control the controllable, and if something's outside of my control, I can be quite flippant and I can't control it, it off, stop overthinking about it. And some people tend to go down the route of massively overthinking issues, problems, things that never arise, and it's natural. But it's you get swallowed into that. So I guess what I'm saying is, where is that fine balance? And it's something that you find naturally along the way, don't you?
Yeah, and I'll tie that in with what you said when you were talking about the formulation and creation of ultimately what we now know to be ThruDark. And you said, you were very naive getting into it. Yeah. I'm a massive advocate of the phrase, be dumb enough to do. Because we get people out there who, we have so much information readily available at our fingertips at all times. And it's not good for us because, you can be aware of everything, but knowing now what you know about all of the challenges and the hurdles and the obstacles you face in the building of ThruDark, if you knew that at the time in which you had a fucking whiteboard, you'd be like, fuck that. Like, we're back on the circuit.
Absolutely.
I would have done it. So you have to be, exactly as you alluded to, aware of the variables, aware of what you can control within that set of variables, and say, right, we'll just fucking crack on. And as long as you've thought through with it a degree of, and this is probably something, again, you'll have picked up and really honed in your experience in the military, specifically in a tier 1 operation, is that if-then planning. So if this happens, then we know what to do. Then if that, then that. But then you've also, like you said, got to have the wisdom to say, well, if this happens, then we have something we can control and we can create an iteration and we can move forward with that. But we ultimately can't control if that event happens. Yeah. So fuck it off.
Yeah. It's good to think like that. What you're mentioning is most likely course of action, most dangerous course of action, you know. And what usually tends to happen is maybe somewhere in between that. And it's the Mike Tyson, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the fucking face. And it's true.
Like, let's take the analogy. So it's very easy for us to talk analogies of, planning operations in a special forces environment, but that's not relatable to a vast amount of people, as interesting as it is. Yeah. But then we look at, let's look at ThruDark, and let's look at when you had everything ready to go and set to launch and the fucking website went down. Yeah. Didn't plan for that, but you're like, fuck, well, what can we do? Can't control it. Let's get to the location.
We are where we are.
Yeah, exactly that. And you kind of have to have that ability to realize when something's outside of your control and turn it off. So you called it flippant. I just call it emotional regulation. Yeah. And being like, well, I can't control it. So And the difficulty and the challenge is like, especially when you're in a position of leadership, is then communicating that to another person, because they can be made to feel anxious and more unsettled by the fact they think you don't care.
Yes.
It's like,
I think often it comes across like he
just doesn't care.
He doesn't care, or he's not as emotionally invested as me, or why is he not as worried as me?
Mate, I just don't have the bandwidth for that to be in my cognitive load at the moment, so I'm fucking it off.
Yeah.
I'm aware of it, but it's not. I can't allow it in my I've got about the ability to handle between 5 and 7 bits of information. I don't have room for it.
Yeah, I kind of refer to it like I've got a 10 gig brain, and if somebody's trying to run 15, which is, it feels like at the moment all the time, it's just being conscious of what you allow to be put onto the fucking SD card to be loaded into the brain, I guess. But
100%. Even like with this is how we view things in the Hard to Kill program. Like if we know someone wants physical excellence for whatever reason, it's relatively simple to do that in terms of if you've got the tools and the resources and understanding to train, like you can facilitate it. But then you look at, right, your wife's fucking chewing you out at home, you got stress at work, like you've got all these other things going on. These are all consuming your bandwidth to the extent where then you don't have the mental energy or the propensity to go and do that. Therefore, the plan is fucked from the first because you haven't considered those things. So you've got to look at, right, well, I can control these and change these. So speaking to your point then, it's about, well, how much have you got on the SD card? And you need to go through and start closing some files, which means you need to learn how to A, be aware of it, B, how to regulate it, C, how to communicate about it. And then you come back to your SD card, it's blank.
And I think, that's a really good way of putting things. And I think for me, the main takeaway for that is being conscious enough to be selfish, to understand why you're being selfish for the right reasons, and looking after yourself as well, so that people do get the better version of you, people that are in your immediate circle, but also external as well. And also not fucking bothering your arse about other people's opinions. And I always say, like, if people are thrown, we're hardwired that way, aren't we, humans? We can get Trustpilot reviews here, loads of fucking, and your eyes just pings to the fucking the 1 star, the fucking ThruDark shit because they didn't answer my email within 2 minutes, and you just straight away it gets you. But I guess you've got to be conscious of that, and you've got to understand that if they're not in your tribe, or you wouldn't ring that person up for advice in particular, then don't fucking listen to it. But it's easier said than done, and I understand that.
1,000,000%. And it comes down to, if we look at, again, it's a degree of awareness and education, understanding that even as recently as 500 years ago, if you were the outlier and you got cast out of your village, you got exiled, that was basically a death sentence, because you couldn't survive and you were fucked. So then you go even further back than that. The same has been true throughout all of history until now. And now we actually don't have to care about the opinions of other people. And people are operating with zero accountability on anonymous profiles, and the detractors fucking everywhere. Like absolutely everywhere. You'll have had your fair share. I've definitely had my fair share. And it's kind of like, well, the way I like to look at it is you could quite literally run into a burning building and save a child, and someone would still call you a nonce. So that's just the way I look at it. I'm like, I did the right thing with the information I had available at the time, and I'll fucking stick by that, because my intent was inherently good. So it's fascinating for people to hear that as well.
What's it's kind of linked to that the topic as well is, mate, what's your thoughts on luck?
I'm actually reading a book about this at the moment, and there is a science behind it, I'll put it that way, in terms of people, to the greatest extent, actually generate and create their own luck based on their propensity to take an opportunity, which is based on their ability to see an opportunity. So if you're always walking around and you're relatively pessimistic and your fucking head's always on the ground and woe is me, and you're resentful of the world around you, then your SD card is full of reasons why you can't be successful, and reasons why it shouldn't visit you. Whereas when you're able to do some of the things we've discussed in terms of just persevering, getting yourself back on your 2 feet again, nothing Herculean, nothing heroic, just get back up again and realize what's outside of your control, inside your control, you're typically more fulfilled, you're much more grateful, and you're slightly more aware of what opportunities there are to be had. So you think, well, I don't know if it's going to go my way or not, but fuck it, I'm in. All of a sudden you're visited by Lady Luck. Do you know what I mean?
It's that famous saying, isn't it, when opportunity, preparation meets opportunity and stuff. So there's an element of that, but that's interesting, mate. I guess there's a lot of people probably from the outside looking at, you get that concept, it's all right for you, isn't it? You had this guy, this was thrown there, and it's fucking all right for me, is it? Do you know what I mean?
People only see the success that they're seeing right now, and it is impressive, but rightly fucking so. But you and I have spoken today about from whence it came, and over the past 36 hours we've talked about everything that's created that. And actually, if you look at the success that you're experiencing today, or deservingly experienced today, it started when that like fucking 16-year-old kid decided to keep going even though his knee popped out. Because how many people do you know could have in quotation marks had a successful career, but something happened to them, and that is now the reason and the baggage they've carried through life as to why they've not been successful.
Is there a way that you can kind of, this is really it interests me, mate, the psychology and everything as well. But is there a way that you can, if it's kind of hard coded or wired into if things have been passed to you, and how do you rewire your thinking and your processes? Because that has a massive effect on output, doesn't it? Essentially.
I'll start off by saying that I class myself as being really relatively average in pretty much every facet of life, but I've just curated an environment where I've got the spaciousness to have done loads of work on my own mind, and then that's given me the capacity to spot opportunity in others, and then obviously I can build and inspire other people and facilitate success in them. That's basically my role to the greatest extent. So to speak to your question, it all comes with being willing to accept that you're not perfect in the first place, and which people don't always necessarily consciously avoid. It's an unconscious avoidance because it really hurts. And there's a lot of things that you'd have done in your life that have happened even before your military career and so on and so forth. Definitely things that I've done in my life where you feel an enormous amount of guilt and shame. And you can probably think of a number of memories that make that horrible red feeling at the back of your neck. So you avoid thinking about it. Yeah. You have to accept that like you are a brilliant person, but we all have all things within us. Yeah. And you've got to be willing to like, right, okay, let's open fucking Pandora's box. Let's see what's in there. And we start having conversations. And I'm not saying for a second you've got to sit down or lay on a couch and cry about boys that have been mean to you and all that sort of stuff. But actually just be willing to enter into that conversation and say, right, what can I actually learn about myself here? Like what's not creating the outcome that I want? So you've got to have the capacity to take that condor moment and say, well, I'm getting these outcomes on purpose. What am I doing that's creating that outcome? Because it's not the one that I want. And then take that responsibility and say, well, actually, maybe I have been using that a bit of an excuse. Maybe when I do point the finger at someone else, say, well, it's fucking easy for you, or I'd do it if I had that, or is this, that, and the other. Well, maybe just take a step back and say, well, what's maybe missing in you, or what's happened in your life that has led you to this situation, and what could be changed?
Wicked, mate. I think, do you know what? Yeah, there's fucking a lot of gold in there, mate. I think what's important for me and what I've realised and recognised and is that communication part. We've talked about it, but more importantly, how I communicate with myself. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you'll probably know how many thoughts in a minute, 4,000 or probably...
It's about 70,000 a day.
Wow, yeah. I was way off. So, no, sorry, in like a minute, it's a lot of fucking thoughts, and sometimes good, sometimes bad, and I think it's recognising which one to listen to. You know, you've obviously read Chimp Paradox, Professor Steve Peters, an amazing book which answered a lot of questions for me in terms of how I react to situations, and that was quite an eye-opening or mind-opening book for me. And I think it's a lot of times, and what I've experienced as I get older is this weird feeling of self-doubt which comes on as I'm getting older, because as you get older, you start to realise you don't know fucking anything. And you're like, shit. Because the naivety was great in the younger years to get you to where you needed to be, and the points we've already mentioned. And then you start getting older and you're like, fuck. Then that level of doubt starts to creep in, because now you're being asked to speak about things and through experience, which is great, which, you know, nobody can argue with experience. But then as you start to look into more of the literature and listening to podcasts, you're like, shit, this is a big topic, a big issue. So I need to work on myself now. And I think kind of not beating yourself up too much about that, and understanding that's a normal process that a lot of people go through in their mind, and it's constant daily battle.
Absolute acceptance of it. You might be familiar with something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah. Basically, two scientists, Dunning and Kruger, who studied that the less you know, the more you think you know, and that's basically why stupid people don't know they're stupid.
Exactly, mate. That was the point I was going to raise.
You start when you're early 20s and you fucking know everything. You've got that naivety and it's brilliant, and you think you know a lot, and you're able to act because you think you're an expert in that field. And we've all been there. And then you come off that, like I said, and you realise, fucking hell, there is a vastness to all this information. And
it can almost be overwhelming.
That paralysis by analysis. Absolutely fucking cripples people. It's one of the biggest things we see in guys reaching out to us, because there's an overwhelming amount of information available to us. And like you said, return back to your point, be dumb enough to do, be resilient enough to fail, and then get back on your own 2 feet and just fucking crack on. And surround yourself with the right people that can facilitate that within you. Yeah. And then for me, you know, I'm cautious that we've glanced over an enormous section of your life, and we'll probably keep returning to that. But now, obviously, that brings us to ThruDark and the business and all of the really hard knocks that you'll have probably had over the 5 years. Is it safe to say that business is more of a fucking boxing match than you thought it was going to be?
Absolutely. Considering everything, you know, me and Louis have done in the military, the operations, and, you know, everything that I can't really speak about, but you can imagine some difficult times, but obviously some good times as well, some intense times. And then, wow, fucking business is a different beast altogether. We're very similar, but obviously quite different as well, myself and Louis, and I think that's why it works really well. Yeah. I'm super fortunate to have entered business with somebody like Louis. His attention to detail, his work ethic is just mind-blowing. Thank fuck he's been dealing with the stuff that he deals with on that side, because that's definitely a weakness in myself in terms of operations, process, the contract side, the bits that I'm just like, oh my God, sometimes it can be overwhelming for my brain to deal with. And he picks that up and runs with it valiantly and does an incredible job. But then it works quite well this side because, Louis likes to do that sort of stuff, and then I'll be more on this kind of side. It's kind of how it's set up upstairs is like kind of that side and this side.
It's almost like right brain, left brain. Like,
it is.
Creative, logical.
That's a real good way of putting it. And ours is kind of sales, marketing, e-com, website, social, and it's kind of my lane and sales and bits and pieces. And Louis is more operational. It's more product. It's that kind of side of things as well. But I think when we both went into this, bags of enthusiasm. We still have that today. But fuck, it's been a mad journey from things messing up. But we always went back to this ethos. And I think what we wanted to set ourselves up for success, and how can we do that with knowing what we know at the time? It was trying to get a foundation laid. It was brand guidelines. It was foundation, but building everything from a solid foundation as well. And I remember sitting in our first board meeting, and it's comedy really. We had a board meeting. It was me, Louis, and Steve. And what are we? 4 weeks into ThruDark, we've got some caps, t-shirts, and some few items which aren't selling too quick. Yeah, Steve set us up for success from the very beginning in terms of spreadsheet, how we wanted to formulate the business. And I can remember just sat there looking at this fucking spreadsheet up on the screen thinking, what the fuck is all this? It's super boring and not interested. Just let us go and do what we need to do. And, at the time, now looking back, having processes and systems and things in place has massively helped. I'm sure you've experienced some of that as well. But I mean, over the 5 years, there's been emotionally, it puts a massive strain on the relationships personally with me and Louis. Thank fuck we're tight. You can get through the low lows and everything else. For the most part, we agree on everything. Or certainly come to the same conclusions. But sometimes you don't, and it's difficult then to manage that. But listen, we've got thick skin. I think bringing our kind of experience and relationships across from special forces is one thing you learn, is to be quite thick-skinned. We shoot straight arrows. We tell each other how it is. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Sometimes things can manifest over time if things aren't spoken about, and we've had our fair share of ups and downs as well, and peaks and troughs. And I tell you what wasn't on the fucking whiteboard is a pandemic. And we just moved premises and systems. Things are always improving, back end stuff, things crash, websites, customers, you're dealing with everything. It's a massive beast, so it's difficult, mate. There's so many instances and stories that we can go into, but I think for the most part, I've enjoyed the process.
It is enjoyable, like as much as in the moment it seems all consuming and there's no seeming way out of this that's a good way out of it.
Yeah.
When you come from the other side, like, whew, done it, piece.
Yeah, and I think because you care, you absolutely care, it means more as well. Everything that happens, good and bad, it's elevated because you're emotionally invested, you're physically invested, you're financially invested. We were fucking all chips in.
You're fucking about with your own resources. Like, there's other gambles you can make in life, whether it be physical, emotional, so on and so forth. But when you're as humans are inherently driven to acquire resources, because that's what puts food on the table, keeps our lights on, and everything, in a very reductionist sense, boils down to that. So in this, it's a vision and it's a mission and it's a business, but it's ultimately determining what allows you the amount of resources. When you start making decisions that are fucking around with that, it triggers so many emotions in like how you respond to it and stuff like that. And you spoke to it enough to the importance of having the right person and communicating about it. And actually, as you said, deliberately initiating conflict if you're not happy, because the metric of success, or how we talk about the metric of success, is after an issue, does that relationship descend to 99% or does it heal to 101%? Because ultimately you're going to behave your way to abject failure, or you're going to strengthen that relationship. So you've got to be happy to go to someone saying, look, this is the fucking problem. This is why it's a problem to me, and this is what I want done about it. Yeah. And having the actual strength of character to do that is really, really important. And again, it's the culture that we see on the outside. Yeah, and I think for us, it's the as we've kind of grown and thankfully got some amazing people in to kind of lighten the load for myself and Louis. And one of the probably the most difficult things that we've had to learn is to try and step back from the coal face, get out of the trenches, just trying to have that kind of commander's intent, look back. And it's so difficult to not work in the business, and try and decide to work on the business. And that's been difficult because you get real guilt for wanting to do that. We work with a propensity, quite a high proportion actually, of business owners and CEOs and people who are successful in their space. And it's the same. It's a real identity shift, which has been a recurring theme about what we've spoken about today. It's a real identity shift from being on the tools then you said stepping back and realizing that maybe you're not fulfilling those orders and maybe you're not doing that hands-on, but actually your only task for today is to think of a solution to that one problem that's really crippling the business. But that 3 hours you spend thinking is actually what is going to, create the whole next year of growth and development of a product. Yeah. It's very hard to do.
It's hard to know when that shift needs to happen because it happens. It's like death of 1,000 cuts. It happens slowly over time. It's not one day you walk in and go, fucking brilliant, I can down tools now. I've got this guy over here, she's doing this, and brilliant, they're dealing with that. It happens slowly. Through business, and you start getting people.
You're just thinking like, I can't fucking get all this done.
Yeah, you're at that point as well financially from the business and resource and cash flow and everything else, and then you're literally knowing when to hire is a bit of a skill, and we've fucked up with that sometimes, leaving it too late. You're literally watching somebody drown and you're like, they need support, but it's just trying to get that timing right in all the areas across all the areas of the business as well. So that's another learning point. But look, we're in a good space right now. We're super happy. We're surrounded by great people. We've instilled, I'd like to think, a great culture within the business, which you touched on earlier. And I think that's really important as well. Surround yourself with good people, giving them a big hook to really get their teeth into, because we've all been there. We've worked, those jobs, and there are people probably listening that, again, have to work jobs for different reasons, but there's nothing worse than fucking swinging your legs out of the bed in the morning and think, fuck my life.
Do that again. Yeah.
I just cannot be chinned, but it's difficult. It's not an easy decision. I'm not telling people that it's all on you, and especially if you've got people that depend on you and kids and little ones and misses and everything else. So it's a difficult decision to make. It's
again, it's easy to make, like you said, ideologies of, just fuck it all off and go your own way and do your own thing. But there's
risk.
Yeah,
a lot of fucking risk.
Yeah, and there's a lot of unknown risks if you're naive to that side of things. Well, I was massively naive when I started personal training. I just liked training.
Yeah,
and started training people, and I was similar to you in that, when you were doing PT and you were doing lifeguarding at the same time, I was like, how long do I want to be on the gym floor counting reps for, mate? This is not a future. This is not an impact I want to have on the world. And then having to make really terrifying, even the first time you talk about a sensitive topic on social media and you press that send button and thousands of people are going to see that, you fucking shit in the bed. And just those small decisions that you make day in and day out.
Do you know what, for me, like when I was trying to break this down logically in my brain, and we were leaving, the military, and for me and Louis, our worst case scenario with ThruDark was, it would fail.
To actually fail and then go back to something and just say, well, I tried.
Yeah,
I could not have done any more. I tried. And that's, you'll know from your environment, maybe when you were thinking about going on selection, you'd only been in a commando unit for 2 years. You probably had a few detractors there being like, fucking get back in line, Crow. Like, you're not the person that can go on that. And you spoke to, speaking to people who have failed that course, and they probably had that same thing of, are you going to fail? What's the fucking point? It's nails, you haven't got a chance. And people will always look to, not people, that's not fair. There's always a proportion of people who will look to elevate themselves by stepping on you, but it's actually having that self-security and that confidence in yourself and say, well, I believe I can do it, and I believe I've got the minerals, and if it doesn't go to plan, then I'm happy to accept that and say, I fucking failed, but at least I tried.
Yeah, and I think there's knowing the difference between, being risk aware and risk averse as well. There's the two, quite similar things, but very, very different. And I think a good story actually because I'd only done 3 years in the Marines, when I went on my sniper course, for me that was a big checklist to see if I was kind of capable from a soldiering point of view, and physically fit enough as well. And I remember sitting in with the chief instructor, and he was kind of end of the course kind of load out and kind of, where do you want to go? What sniper billet do you want? And I remember looking at him and saying, I want to go on selection. And he literally fucking downed his mug of tea on the desk, literally laughed in my fucking face. And I was like, his words were, good luck with that. Yeah. And I just thought, fuck, is that what it, I later found out that he'd failed selection, but you're usually the fucking case. And I just left the room just sort of dumbfounded, thinking,
you don't know what to make of it. You're
what the fuck?
You're like, do I fuck him off and prove him wrong? Or has he got a point? Am I not good enough?
Does he know something I don't?
When I entered the MDS, the Marathon Disciples I'm doing next year, and I was looking for someone to oversee my programming, because I've been a coach 10 years. I deeply value the coaching process and having a second set of eyes. And I'm not going to name any names for their benefit, but I had someone laugh down the phone at me as well. 87 kilo guy, jiu-jitsu, never done an ultra marathon. You need to be able to run 20 miles a day, 5 days a week by December. I was speaking to him last month, and he actually laughed down the phone at me. I was like, well, from me, mate, I'm out. Put the phone down. But I was like, fuck it. And I had a moment. I was like, am I way behind the curve? Am I being really naive? And I was like, nah, fuck that, mate. The worst that happens is a DNF, and it's being able to accept that. You get him in all walks of life, mate. You do really do get them. And if anyone listening to this, don't ever think that anybody, even if Staz's caliber, is immune to that. Like, we've all faced it.
Yeah.
It's what you do.
Mate, we had the fucking same when we left the military, and close friends and colleagues that we work with. You know, we heard things that were being said, and some to our face, some not to our face, and about what we were doing, and guys just couldn't understand it. They didn't want to understand it. It was that the heckling, you know, from the corners of, you're doing what? You doing a fucking fashion brand, or you're doing clothing, or I don't get it. What's it going to be? And have you seen what those two are doing? They're fucking mad. You know what I mean? And but mate, it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Fucking stick to your vision. Stick to what you want to do and what you believe in, and be, you know, live, eat, sleep, and breathe it, and just blaze your own trail and go for it.
And you get to a point where you almost, I've certainly arrived at a point for me where I've been able to be empathetic, not patronising, but I've done a lot of work on myself, and I recognised that when I was a younger man, I was an angry little fucker. I was very reactive, and I was a bit resentful to other people, and seeing how they were getting on, I was, why is not that me? So I'm able to be empathetic, so I'm being in that part of my life, and I've experienced those emotions, and it's deeply unpleasant, and I don't want for anyone to live their life in that way. So I just kind of let it wash over me. I'm like, don't hate you, I don't want you to take it back. I'm just like, hopefully you arrive at a point one day where you and I can sit across the table and be fucking sweet, because you've moved through that part of your life.
Yeah, I can I definitely see elements of that in myself as well.
Yeah, cool. So, you know, now you're in a space where the chessboard is very much set for you guys to continue moving forward. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about you in a personal entity. You know, anyone who follows the ThruDark page or yourself will know you've got a massive passion for jiu-jitsu now, mate. How's that going?
Yeah, how's it going, Marc? It's like, for people that do it, know. Those who don't, I guess it's somebody described it as kind of drowning out of water at times, but it's a baptism of fire. I think I'll start with, why did I want to do it? It was something that was on my radar. I'd always kind of loved, enjoyed, participated in martial arts. So that started as kickboxing as a kid, then moved to boxing, and then there was some more stuff done in the military. And I love martial arts as well, like kind of most type A personalities. Love a scrap, love watching a scrap. And when I left the military, for me, I needed something to get focused on. I loved training. Gym was fine. I'd always done the gym, and it was actually through Sam. So for Sam Sheriff, an ex-Royal Marine PTI, first black belt in the Marines. Sam set up a reorg. So shout out to Sam and reorg and the team there, and Marc and everybody else who've done a fantastic job there. It was one of those things that is an itch that I wanted to scratch. And with most of these things, time is not right. This isn't right. I've got a bad knee. My back's fucked. You know, I'm injured. I don't want to injure myself. I don't think I can do it. And you know, Sam came in one day, and the timing was right. We just moved into the unit, and Sam came in with his mats in the back of his van, rolled them out, and said, well, you know, I was kind of going through this process with him. Well, I don't think I can do it. My right knee's barked, and this and that, and excuse matrix. And he was like, well, see how you get on. You know, it's why don't you give it a whirl? And we did. We had a roll here, and humbled immediately. It's probably one of the first things you realise and recognise, and it can affect people in different ways. You can either kind of immediately put up the defense to that and the shield and say, well, no, that's fine, I don't want to do that, I'll just stick to what I'm good at, I'm just going to box as a load of shit, and you know. Or you can go, fuck this, I want to learn this, and what just happened, and how was he able to do that to me? And I couldn't do fuck all about it.
You feel so helpless. You're like, I'll just put that there, and it's like, I haven't got the use of my arm.
And for me, that was I need to learn this, and I'm interested, I'm intrigued now, and I've got an addictive personality anyway. But I think off the back of that, then we ordered some mats here, and you know, again, shout out to Jimmy Johnson, a bit of a local legend around here from Phoenix MMA. He came down and continued training with the team here. ThruDark, something we put on for the staff as well. And his son, Nathan, came down as well. Brown belt at the time. He's now black belt, youngest black belt in the UK, 21. Nathan now continues to train us consistently. And with most of these things, because I hate being shit at things, so for me, I was like, what do I need to do? How many times do I need to train? And jiu-jitsu's weird. It fucking infuriates but ignites at the same time, because you know so little, and it's so involving, and it's like a form of meditation for me. You know, when I'm on the mat, mindfulness, you don't think about anything else other than being on task. And it reminded me of that flow state when you're at work and you get into it, and you know, that wanting to learn and be better was super addictive to me, and I loved it. you know, it's always the same. It's why didn't I start this shit earlier?
Yeah.
You know, but it is what it is. It's the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago or now.
I think that's the one phrase I hear from everyone who starts. It's like, I fucking just wish I'd started when I was younger.
Well, you
like,
haven't, so you are where you are. And
you are, yeah.
Plant your fucking tree, start watering it. You know, I started at 30, 6 years old, which some people, I've had messages about that. And it's not too late. Can I start now? Just fucking get on it. Get involved.
You're not going to be a world champion. You can still be very, very good.
I will be. No,
you can still be brilliant. And there's people that start in their late 50s.
Yeah, but it's more than that. What I like about it is it's a journey for you personally, and it's not about comparing yourself to other people or somebody who's the same age or somebody who's the same belt as you, or you know, who's doing it quicker or who's getting promoted quicker. It's your own personal journey. And you know, at the moment, Nathan, you know, just won a Polaris as well, and an incredible young man, and you know, an inspiration as well. And he's been brilliant coming in here, training the guys, training us. What just tends to happen is, instead of the weight stuff now, it's just all jiu-jitsu. But I think it's so important for people, not everybody, and I'm not saying it's a one shoe fits everybody or one gi fits everybody. It's different. Some guys have tried it here, didn't like it, and have left it. Some guys have tried it, not liked it, come back to it, now like it. So it's different for everybody. But I think for me personally, it's been incredible for my mindset in and out of the gym as well. So it's I think it's an important life lesson for everybody to learn. You know, everybody should be punched in the face once,
see how it feels, yeah.
Sat on their ass, and everybody should be choked out. You know, and put in that position of being humbled. And I think how you react to that and how you move forward from that is a true testament to character and to you as a person, as an individual as well. And what I like about it is it's perpetual learning. It fucking never ends.
It's so cyclical, isn't it? Like you and I were talking earlier when we were getting a coffee, and it was like, you know, you've been working your guard passing game for a while, and you feel really proficient in that, and you feel, right, okay, I'm great, and now I'm going to work on guard retention off my back. You're like, I'm fucking shit.
Like, oh shit.
And you spend a couple of months being like, I'm really shit, and I get a bit better, and then I've nailed that. Then you maybe revisit your guard passing, and what used to work now doesn't work anymore because of the new stuff. You're like, fuck's sake. But it's a constant upward iteration. And there's so many styles to the sport as well. I've spoken about this a little bit with a few different people on the podcast. There's so many different styles available to you as well. So sometimes it's the right sport, it's the right person, but the style that it's been taught in just doesn't work, and that's absolutely fine. First gym I ever trained at was a brilliant gym, and it was very heavy on technique in the gi, and I was like, I just don't relate to this ever so much. I didn't think it was for me, and as you said, went to a new gym where I'm now with ASW with Cam, who's a very likable person, one of my closest mates, and he's just a fucking fighting man. Yeah, he's just like, if someone can touch your face, they can punch it. Stop chilling out on your back and doing sport jiu-jitsu. And just like, and I just immediately fell in love with it, and now then that's been a very, very similar influence in my life up until recently with the MDS and preparations. I mean, I've got to be a bit more cautious about my knees. But I definitely resonate with that. And also with regards to training as well, you know, I think the reality of the matter is when we're in our 20s and our 30s, we lift weights, A, because of how it makes us feel, but B, because of how it makes us look. And as you develop in maturity and self-security, you become less concerned with how things look and more concerned with how they feel. And you're like, well, jiu-jitsu makes me feel brilliant. I feel confident. I feel fit, healthy, resilient. I'm pushing myself mentally. I'm working on the mental skills that are required to solve problems under pressure and at high pace. So I'm not that concerned if I don't have fucking 18-inch biceps anymore. Yeah, and I think the main, agree with all your points there. And I think the main issue or problem, I think if people are fucking brutally honest with themselves, it's their ego, you know, from training as well and jiu-jitsu to step on a mat, you know, with considering kind of my background, it's easy to settle back into, well, this is me and I can rest on my laurels here and I've done this and I've done that and I look good, I'm in the gym, I can train well and, you know, I can box quite well and bits and pieces and kickbox, I'm fine, I don't need anything else. And then to step on a mat and put a white belt and have that white belt, blue belt mentality, however we want to phrase that, it's the same thing. It's putting yourself back into a situation where you don't know fuck all and having the humility to go through that and continue with it and persevere. And ultimately what comes out the back of that or the other end of that is a better version of yourself. Yeah, and it's something that you can't fucking buy. Like you spoke to it being a journey, it's just thousands of hours of just turning up. And there's weeks and months I can think of when it's just been every day getting in the car after training and having a real word with myself and be like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm fucking shit. It's not getting any better. And then there's other times when it's like you are on a trend, an upward trend for like 6 months and you're fucking smashing it and you're giving people problems you have no business giving problems to. Like, I'm the fucking kiddie here. I'm the boy. And it forces you to constantly self-reflect and different formulations of self-reflection reflection, but it's all powerful. It's all a skill that is then transferable to other areas of your life. Maybe, you know, you're experiencing problems on the mat and you think about that, and then you're more inclined, you've got the mental skills of, I'm experiencing problems at home. Let's use that same framework. Like, why is that? Like, what am I not doing that's causing that? What am I doing? Like, has this happened, or did I make it happen? And beginning to think in that way.
Wicked, mate.
Yeah. So obviously the elephant in the room we haven't spoken about yet is the book, mate. That's exciting. It's basically there's a much more thorough job of covering everything that we've rattled and raced through. So I looked at the blurb on Amazon when I pre-ordered the book, and if you haven't done so, I recommend you do, because from reading the blurb alone, I was like, I fucking want a slice of that. But can you more comprehensively talk to us about the book, mate, and what it's about?
Yeah, I think first of all, before we dive into it, there's been a few issues with the releasing of the book, and more so the timing. So it is available to purchase right now, multiple platforms, Amazon and bits and pieces, and we've kind of done the pre-sale and stuff. And thank you to everybody that has pre-ordered as well. It's done quite well in terms of pre-orders. We're keeping people updated. My main issue at the moment, or the book's issue, is it's currently in with the disclosure cell with the military. Obviously, there's some stories, some bits and pieces in there that understandably have to go through the disclosure process, security process, to make sure everything is tight and ticked off. So this process is taking a long time, and it does for obvious reasons. You know, where we're kind of working with them, working through the process and making amendments, and it takes time. So it was originally due to be released in September, just gone, then pushed to January. It's now pushed to August next year, just to buy it as enough time, really. Because to make those changes, but also make them in the right way, because, you know, there's one thing just saying kind of remove this or the whole chapter. We kind of want to retain the information, because the book for me was about, it's not so much about Hollywood stories and this and that, and this is what I did, and look at this. What I wanted to do with the book, because there's enough of those books out there. I think for me, what did we want to do? We wanted to talk about the lessons that I'd learned, the knockbacks that I'd had from my childhood through everything that we've kind of spoke about here, the lessons that I learned, and then how have I applied them now into business or into your life in general, you know. And for me, that was the main part of it. So it's kind of four main parts of the business, really. But we talk about, there's loads of different obviously chapters and bits and pieces, and I talk about everything jiu-jitsu as well, and white belt mentalities, and controlling the controllables, which we spoke about as well. But the main takeaway from me from the book was about how we reframe our minds, the lessons that we've learned, the hardships, you know, having that lens to now look back and understand why we've done things, and how it frames our decision making processes. And that's the main takeaway from me. It's called The Hard Road Will Take You Home, which was a speech that was delivered to us when I was in, I want to say week 20 of Royal Marines training, and we were just breaking up for summer leave, and we were on the bottom field. All the other troops were on the field there, and quite an infamous, well-known individual stood atop the grassy knoll, Colonel Thorpe, and quite an imposing individual, you know, big in stature, who obviously went on to be in the SPS as well. And he just delivered this speech that just one of those speeches that you remember for time, and you could have heard a pin drop out on the bottom field there. And the main takeaway from the speech was, stop taking the fucking easy path. You know, you're all here because you want to be here, and you're here for the right reasons. You know, and his main speech was geared around kind of people look for the shortcuts. You know, that's not the path. You know, everyone wants this path of least resistance, choosing the easy options. And he was like, but ultimately, if you want to fucking get home, the hard road will lead you home. You know, so really fucking dial in on that. And it at the time, I needed to hear that speech. It fucking resonated with me. It's something that stuck with me, a little mantra that's always been there with me in the back of my mind whenever I think about cutting a corner, because we all fucking do, you know, professionally and personally. I go, if I just do this, and fucking you know, make my life easier and quicker, and I don't need it. And for me, I always sort of revert back to that, and I look at myself from an outside perspective and say, well, or visualize how I wanted to act in a situation. And we'll touch on visualization as well, kind of when I'm trying to sell my book, doing the hard sell. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I wanted to title the book The Hard Road Will Take You Home, because it's something that I always revert back to when I'm thinking about stuff, or whether I'm that little fucking voice in my head telling me to take the easy option. I try not to.
And
that's not to say I don't. I'm fucking full disclosure.
I think that's really powerful, again, because people have a propensity to compare based on what they see on social media, and they look at someone maybe like yourself and think he's got his shit in one sock, he's well put together, and he's fucking nails, and he came out, he was born as an SBS operator. And the reality is that you still have the same psychology of, you know, your brain is a prediction machine. It's always trying to predict, have we got the energy, have we got the resources for that? And if it wants to conserve energy, it's going to try and find a fucking shortcut.
Yeah.
And actually, it's all just about having the awareness, catching it in the act, and then having those mental models and frameworks that you can apply in that situation and go, nope, we're fucking got. Gaz and I were laughing and joking earlier about the March for November.
Yeah.
You know, it's what, like 21 miles?
Yeah.
I know it'd be very easy to get part of the way in and be like, I'm just going to turn on and fuck off. And it's like, well, you've got 10 miles back that way, mate, to get to the van, so you may as well fucking finish it now.
There's a lot to be said for that, isn't there?
Yeah, if you remove those support structures and just, now that's in a very physiological setting, but if you look at it in a life, and again, I always try to relate things back to how it's applicable to people that have invested their time to listen to us talk, is, well, you know, if we are blaming things outside of our control, if we're blaming circumstance, or, you know, dare I say it, making excuses, look at the situation and say, well, the hard thing for me to do here is actually accept responsibility. But by accepting responsibility, I also accept that I can change the situation. Or I can take the easy road, which is keep blaming other people, which feels great, feels easy at the time, gives me a massive hit, but it doesn't change this fucking situation. So I have to take the hard road, and it is going to make me feel like shit, and I am going to make me feel a little bit guilty, but I'm going to have a fucking... Do you know what the happiest animal on earth is?
Ooh, I want to say something like a fucking sloth.
It's a goldfish. It's got a fucking 10-second memory.
Oh,
right, yeah, there you go. You fucking forget about it. Big goldfish.
Sloths look happy though.
Yeah, they do look pretty happy. I'd be happy if I was a sloth. But I don't actually know if goldfish are happy. That's just a really cool quote I got from Ted Lasso. Like it was a good series, mate. But yeah, the happiest fucking animal on earth is a goldfish because it's got a 10-second memory. So when bad shit happens, forgot about it, and we proceed with what we know. So anything that we have a propensity to self-loathe or self-deprecate or feel guilt or shame, just work for it, forget about it, and deal with what you've got ahead of you. And that's very much what you're talking about there. So I really felt an affinity to what I've read about the blurb of the book, but purely based on that. It wasn't gung-ho, it wasn't I am fucking mega and this is a war story and so on and so forth. And obviously there's a large component of it in that, otherwise it wouldn't have been, you know, with that sell for so long. So I think if anything, that's going to accelerate people's propensity to buy it, because it's going to be really
it's more
intriguing.
about lessons learned and how I can apply those situations into a personal and professional and business setting as well. But the audio piece as well, so the audio book is quite interesting in so much that, you know, obviously I'm narrating it, so apologies for my fucking dull voice and tone. But after each chapter, I can't know if I can say this. Yeah, I can say it. Yeah,
it's your book, mate. So you want
to say what I want until they tell me otherwise. After each chapter, I'm it's a 20-minute down dirty conversation for each of the chapters, and I'm speaking to some really good friends of mine, personal friends, so professionally and personally that I've been surrounded by, and some interesting characters on there. So after each chapter, we break down the chapter, but mainly just go off piste and talk about what we want to talk about for 20 to 30 minutes. So that bit's interesting as well, to kind of get their experience and their input as well into that kind of element as well. So, because to your point, by no means am I sitting here saying that my shit's in one sock, I've got it all sorted and not everything squared away. I haven't, not by any stretch of the imagination. And obviously, to our points earlier, what we were talking about in terms of realizing now that you actually know fuck all is mind blowing and frightening, to be honest. So it's a book that's it was quite an interesting process to go through. It took a long time. Shout out to Matt Allen as well, my ghostwriter. You know, having that kind of patience to sit down with me and really kind of dig into the weeds and leave no stone unturned. You know, it's a hard, difficult process, but it's made me more self-aware of myself as well, and how I think and feel about situations. So I'm glad I've done it, but it's been a hard graft as well, all things considered. So yeah.
I can imagine it'd be quite a therapeutic process in itself, is basically sitting and talking through all that sort of stuff and realizing when you replay it, like, oh fucking hell, yeah. And you spoke just before we got into that section about the book about visualization. So I'll leave that as an open question. Like, what? Talk to me about visualization.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me, mate. Visualization, and I didn't realize I was doing this until, you know, I say quite recently, a few years ago. But visualization has been a massive part of I think my successes, in parts, if I can say success humbly. But I think looking back at kind of what I used to think about and the first time I recognized that I was doing this was when I used to play football. Then at the higher levels I was getting into it, playing football and thinking about situations and visualizing how I wanted to play in certain situations, good and bad as well, and how I would react in situations. So if this didn't happen, how would I want to react, and how would the person that I want to be react in that situation, more importantly. And so I was doing that during football and throughout all these different times. And then it massively came into play when I did when I went on selection. And for me, I wanted to, it's the, I guess, acting the way that you wanted to be. And that was a big part for me. I was like, well, what would a special forces operator, in my eyes, who would that person be? How would they conduct themselves? How would they carry themselves? How would they deal with all their kit and equipment? And how would they also deal with situations and react in certain situations? And I started to visualize and think about that and put myself in that position. And I think it really fucking helped as I was moving through, and I was thinking about stuff again. And well, how would an operator be right now in this situation? I'm fucking tired. Everyone's tired. My everyone's fucking feet are hurting. But how would an operator look? How would they conduct themselves? What mask would they wear? And how would that be projected outwardly? But also, more importantly, how would that be internalized in my mind as well?
How do I communicate it to yourself?
How do I communicate that to myself? And more importantly, and I did that through visualization. And I guess it's not acting, is it? It's really kind of digging into being the person that you want to do. And I do that now when I train, because we can speak about motivation and discipline and how we should, everybody can be fucking motivated, and we're banging the same drums that you probably have for time. But realizing, that discipline is far more important than motivation. But it's also how you speak to yourself is fucking super important. It's knowing when to think, fuck, I don't want to train today. We all fucking feel like that. I don't want to get out of bed. I want a fucking extra 10 minutes, this and that, and excuses, and I'll do it tomorrow, and what's one training session? Who gives a fuck? But having that discipline and that visualization and going, what would the person do, that the person that I want to be, the person that I'm heading towards wanting to be, what would that person fucking do? What is the right thing to do here? And that's helped me out massively. And I didn't realize until maybe a few years ago that I was doing it.
It tends to be the way, mate, and it's fascinating listening to you speak about that, because I can see your cogs whirring, and I can see the visual cinema happening when you're thinking about what you're talking about. But a lot of high performers that I've had the pleasure of speaking to, yourself included in that bracket, have been using these skills without realizing it was a skill. And that's the danger of people only looking at literature. Is like, more often than not, the science is fucking years behind what people are actually doing. I was the same with segmenting. When it's a massive goal, so you break it down even to like getting through the next minute and the next
absolutely
10 minutes.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that.
Visualization is a really interesting topic, and there's a lot in that I want to unpack. But the reason I believe, listening to what you've just said, so it's 0.1% of what actually has happened, but the reason why I believe you maybe had success with it is because you were asking the right question. And a lot of people, when they think about visualization, they think it's about just dreaming up an image of success, crossing that finish line or getting awarded the lid or anything like that. But actually, you are visualizing, but you are asking the right question, which is, well, how would I aspire to say I behaved in this situation? And inside the program, we refer to it as today's self versus tomorrow's self, because today's self inherently wants to jack, wants to take the easy route and preserve energy and just fucking chill out. And then tomorrow's self will be like, you fucking idle cunt, I've got all this work to get through because you couldn't be asked to do it today. Yeah. So if you think ahead to like what would tomorrow's person like or need for me to do that's going to give them the greater chance of success today? Okay, right, I'm going to act on that person's behalf. And I've definitely experienced that in terms of when I've been in front of some of my clients in the Hard to Kill program, would I be proud of how I'm behaving in a situation, of how I respond in the situation, how I've eaten today, how I've trained today, the intensity I developed in that session? Like, would I be proud to showcase that? And you also spoke to wearing the mask, and I think it's important we communicate. It's not about acting as if you're someone else, but there's a bit of a grey area here, and this is kind of where we sit in the Hard to Kill. Like, sometimes you just have to put a mask on, because in certain situations that require high performance, you have to get a job done, and that doesn't just have to be in the military environment. It can be in business as well. You can't go into a boardroom and be like, oh, sorry, I'm having a really hard time at home. Yeah. It's like, right, okay, you've got to know when to put that face on it and act as the person that people need you to be in that environment, but without denying yourself the reality of your emotions, and have a place and a time when you can take that mask off to let the fucking pressure out, whether that's at home, you've got a supportive partner, or you've got coaches, or you've got great friends, where you can actually take that fucking mask off. And Gaz Bamford, someone that you and I both know, he's been and delivered the program before as well. He refers to it as a third space, and I really like that analogy. So
wicked.
For some of you who don't know Gaz, if you look at Jotas Mindset, I think he's on Instagram, and he referred to it and delivered it brilliantly to our guys, and having that third space. You might have got work and then you've got home. There can be an enormous amount of pressures that build between those two environments. And if you're always trying to be dad and then you're always trying to be boss, the pressure can build exponentially inside your own head, and then it leads to procrastination, too much time on social media, speaking to other chicks,
self-loathing and everything else that
all
comes
that
with
sort of stuff. Alcoholism, fucking anything. But if you've got a third space, whether that be the gym, whether it be a group of mates, whether it be a coach, whatever, where you can take that fucking mask off and just like
Yes, mate.
Let that pressure drain out. That is immeasurably powerful.
Yeah.
You probably had that with your mates at the time. And
I heard it referred to. I like that third space, but shout out to Gaz as well. He was one of my team leaders when I joined the Sabre Squadron. A guy I look up to enormously as well. But I think I heard it first referred to as the Japanese saying that we all have three masks, and it's the first mask is the mask that you want to portray, the mask that you want to wear and allow everybody else to see. The second mask is the mask that you wear when you're around close friends. And then the third mask is the mask you only show to yourself when you look yourself in the fucking mirror, and that's your real self, that's your person.
And that's the person you've got to get to know.
Yeah, and I guess between putting and wearing these different masks is knowing those spaces and when to wear the mask, when to not wear the mask, when to take the mask off, and allow yourself the time to put your own mask on and look yourself in the mirror, allow yourself to deal with issues and problems, and be honest with yourself and deal with all the things that we're talking about there as well. So it's interesting.
People talked about being authentic and being yourself and so on and so forth, but like you'd have to be at the very highest end of the spectrum to believe you can just be one version of yourself in all places, in all situations. You have to be able to chameleon yourself, and that's not to say you're being disingenuous or you're not being yourself. You're just spotlighting certain elements of your characteristics and traits more in certain environments than in others.
I think it's being self-aware,
100%. Like
and socially aware as well, situationally aware.
You don't if you let's take a sporting environment, the way in which you might inspire the blokes on the pitch if you're playing rugby is not the same way you'd shout through to ask your missus for a cup of tea, right? It's a different level of communication there. More importantly, it's a different level of internal communication. And I think the world that we live in, and people that look at glorification of the military specifically, perceive that they can guilt and shame and berate and bully themselves to success, and it just can't happen. You have to be your own best friend. And people misconstrue that sometimes, and I've said it as, you can just be fucking soft and let yourself rap. It's like, no, because if you were doing something really hard with your best mate and he was begging to rap, would you let him? What would you say to him? You'd be like, come on, mate, you fucking got this. But you'd be encouraging, you'd be supportive, and you'd say the right things to inspire him to know that you can do it, and that's what you have to do. You wouldn't just let him be like, oh, well, mate, just wrap your bangers in and don't worry about it. Okay, but equally, you wouldn't be like, you're a fucking useless cunt, you fucking waste of space, you shouldn't have been in the first place, because that's not going to inspire that person. So you've got to be able to navigate those mental linguistics and look at, how am I actually speaking to myself in that environment?
Yeah, super important.
Yeah, massively so. And then following on from that, something that you and I have discussed a little bit, and it wasn't a belief that I knew that we shared, but I find fascinating and really interesting as well, is this whole grind set, mate. And we referred to it as that, people being like, right, I'm going to work 25 hours a day, I'm going to get up at like 1:30 in the morning and fucking train, and if I'm not doing that, I'm not good enough. What's your general take on that ethos, mate?
I think with context, there's a time and a fucking place for it. I think for the most part, it's complete bollocks. I think, again, trying this one shoe fits everybody. There's a very fucking small substract of people that can operate, live and breathe off of 3 hours sleep a night consistently. There's been times when I've been away operationally and in the SBS where, you have to work till till your eyes are bleeding, and for obvious reasons, you're called to action and you're running on low sleep, low energy, and, and everything else. And I think that's why the selection process is so difficult, because it allows you to understand who is capable of doing that when required. But I think if we now look at business and performance and high performance from an individual and a collective group, the data's there, isn't it? You cannot argue with data. And it's suggesting that you need X amount of hours sleep because it improves performance by X amount. It's science, bro. It's fucking data. Yeah. And I think if people stand in front of you and bang the drum or bang their head against the wall and say, well, no, I think you've got to do this, this, and this. We know now what we thought to be true, and it's being proven that, we can only concentrate, is it 3 90 minutes, I think we were saying, a day, and that rings true for me personally, and I think trying to force people into this mindset and this old way of thinking of 9 to 5, and you've got to work here and work there, and we know that that's not how the human brain works. That's not how we optimally perform. Yeah. And I think sleep is so fucking important. And actually, we chatted about, I'm wearing a Whoop at the minute, which I'm probably going to throw in the fucking bin after this conversation. But you only know what you know. I think through data and stuff, the Whoop's been great, and I'm not addicted to data. It just fascinates me. It's I can take it or leave it, or take it off. The main reason I got it is because I wore Garmin watches and bits and pieces, but I liked it from a jiu-jitsu point of view, because I wanted to see if I was fucking if the data was real to how I was feeling, I was like, I'm fucking licked.
Some rounds feel, I'm like, I nearly died. Like, I saw Jesus.
I think I died. Yeah, I think I died and then came back to life. And now wearing whoops, like, no, you're just fucking hanging out. So yeah, I think for me, it's recognizing and realizing your performance and what works for you as an individual as well. And this fucking mentality of you know, what's it like? Eat these early starts and
eat the frog. 5 a.m. club.
Just go 5 a.m. frogs and just fucking see yourself off. And it's like, you don't need to do that, you know. And I think it's detrimental to you physically, mentally, and output wise as well, which is the most, and emotionally, and which is the most important part as well, you know. And don't get me wrong, you know, I'm not for 1 minute saying I lie until 9, 10 in the morning and just fucking scratch my arse and cruise into work and bits and pieces, you know. But for me, it's kind of a big non-negotiable. It's getting a minimum of 8 hours sleeping, you know, a night. Again, disclosures, times when it can't happen, it won't happen. You're traveling, you're away, you're abroad, you're going out, you know, whatever. But for the most part, for the fucking 80% of or the 90% of the time, I'll try and stick to that and stick to that routine, because I've seen the benefits of that as well, you know, from performance of work, of gym, physical performance, and also mentally from work as well. And knowing when to take yourself away and and not beat yourself up about it, because we're programmed and tuned to just, well, if I'm not fucking working 100%, if I'm not beasting myself, then surely there's people out working me everywhere, and fuck, they're going to get there quicker.
Cares.
Yeah, they're going to climb the hill quicker. It's like, they're fucking not, you know. And I think it's important to recognise that. But again, with the caveat of don't be a lazy cunt.
I think that's the thing is a time and place. So you spoke to a hyper niche, like you're probably talking less than 0.01% of the time when you are at the very tip of the spear that most well-trained operators in the world in very austere and extreme conditions. You have to be able to do that 100%. That's ultimately what gives us the freedom to be able to have conversations like this. But if you're listening to this and you're just getting ready for a marathon, you are not that person, right? If you've been inspired by things you've seen on social media, you are not that person. Equally, you spoke to the fact there's outliers. So I would suggest guys like Nims are probably an outlier.
Yeah.
We know guys like Cameron Haynes, again, is probably an outlier. Those two people that I can think of, like the chances are if you're listening to this, you are not. And that's not me discrediting and reminding you, just saying, like, this was a quote from Martin Jones, who again is part of the Jota setup, came in and presented to the Hard to Kill, and he was like, you categorically cannot train yourself to need or run on less sleep. And what was interesting and he's a PhD, and they presented the data, and they're like, the thing is, the subjective feedback is, I'm fine, I'm absolutely fine. It's okay, cool. And then let's test you. And they tested, and they're like, all of their feedback markers, every single one was like massively off the charts decrease. Like their physical performance is okay, but their ability to
cognitive ability.
Yeah, cognitive ability was fucked. Their ability to concentrate, to spot faults, like abstract reasoning, emotional intelligence.
You can't argue data. Yeah. You fucking can't. But some people will. They will still try.
You just got to want it, bro.
You just got to want it.
You just got to want it.
I think for me is, and trying to link this back into business in a different light is the 1%ers, and I refer to these people quite a lot, and it's usually the negative people. And but you do find yourself trying to change your systems internally from a business point of view to suit the 1%ers, because they shout the loudest. This is fucking terrible. You need to change this. And there's times where we have meetings about things and it's time consuming. And I think we need to do this. Look at what this person said and blah, blah, blah. And fucking stop. Are we about to change our systems and practices for the 1%ers?
And then you realise it was never about you. It was always about them, about what they've gone on.
And it's the same with your physical, development and mental development and everything. Would you change everything that you do to align yourself with the 1%ers?
Because this guy on Instagram is a 1%er, and he gets up at 4 a.m. and he works till midnight, and he's doing it. Yeah, okay, maybe he is one of those outliers. We will probably never know short of genetic testing. And it was great to see, obviously, Nim's film, who I don't know, I'm speaking about him like I'm fucking mates with him. All I've seen of him is his book and his film. Yeah. But they took him into a lab, and they were like, yeah, you're a genetic outlier. Like, your ability to do this is inherently, like, not that you don't work, like the work ethic has absolutely been generated and facilitated by you, but you do have parts of your genetic code that mean you're able to do this in a way that would probably kill the likes of you or I, maybe, as an example. And I think it's really important, and I also think it was really important I got that message from you, because you're someone that a lot of people looked up to, myself included, as the peak of high performance. But knowing that you are a more fulfilled person. You are essentially happier in yourself. Your output is increased and improved. Your just general happiness of life and quality of life is improved by the fact you get more sleep rather than just guilting yourself into sleeping 6 hours a night and not living a life in accordance to your highest values. And again, it's evident to see when we spoke about culture in ThruDark and how you think about productivity in the working day. If we're not built, and we generally are not very well equipped to sit at a desk and concentrate from 9 till 5, it's not really something that we can do. And if you're able to build in flexibility in your day, how powerful that can be to actually mean that you could probably get 8 hours worth of work done in those 3 90-minute blocks if you're allowed to relax. And I know you were talking about having relaxation pods built here and all that sort of stuff, which would be cool.
Yeah, and also the gym facility as well, and people train over their lunchtimes, or they'll come in, before work or during, and it's the same again. If you know, and you should be able, and you should be confident and comfortable enough in the environment to turn around and go, I've maxed out, my brain is absolutely fucking fried. You're probably, from this point on, you're not going to get the perfect version of me in terms of output and work. I need to go take myself away, and that's what we do sometimes. We encourage people to go off site, get away from things, go grab a coffee, grab food, whatever you need to do, come back in. You have to be aware of that. You have to be aware as an employer, but also as employees as well. It works both ways. If people are feeling that fatigue, there's always pressure from other people. Just fucking man up, just what you're doing, just work harder. And it's like, fucking hell, stop beating that drum. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely doesn't work. And again, you spoke to motivation versus discipline, because when people always need to feel motivated, typically they get a really low, what I refer to as density of work. So in an hour, and I do a lot with regards to flow state. I'm currently in the Flow Research Collective, so we do a lot looking at the neuroscience behind flow and how to cultivate that. And I can't remember the exact number, so I might butcher this, but I think the average person gets distracted in excess of 50 times an hour by emails. And every time they get distracted, it takes them then 18 minutes to refocus. So even if you think you've been working for 4 hours, you've probably been working for the guts of about 16 minutes in terms of like peak productivity. So imagine if we were to take away this grind set. Imagine if you were to get a really good night's sleep and you're actually energized and inspired to want to go to work, and removed all the distractions and went absolutely ham for 90 minutes. You've probably got the guts of everything done. And that will remove that guilt of, I've got to work longer because I haven't got it done. But how about we rest so that we can work better rather than work longer so we've earned rest? It's just a bit of a shift in mindset.
Yeah, I like it, mate.
I
was literally sat in a boring HR meeting the other day and looking at contracts and bits and pieces and hours, and having that very same conversation with the guys here, and just pull back again from the table and be like, what are we actually trying to achieve here? Is this a legal hours, and we've got to do 40 hours? Everyone's got to do fucking 40 hours. Well, have they? Why?
There's a few firms
this is the
now
hourly
who are
rate,
pioneering 4-day weeks. There's a few firms who are doing it.
Yeah. And I think just having those windows shortened and allowing people the flexibility, come in a little bit later, train, relax, don't be fucking clocking in, clocking out. We don't do any of that shit here. But it's a fine balance, mate, between, and I guess that has to be managed and at kind of team leadership, and you got to know your people, because people will take the piss, but I think with that comes a level of trust and respect, and that fucking flows both ways, doesn't it?
It ends up being like a bit of a utopian image of like, well, if we were to do this, then society would be better. But it's like, well, it's not always going to be the case, because for as long as there's have and have nots in any capacity of that, you're always going to get people who are going to try and play the system. But as a general overview, like in terms of peak performance, returning back to the point, like avoid that grind set, because it's not conducive to your best work or your happiest life.
Yeah, I like that, mate.
Yeah. I think, mate, we've pretty much covered the list of scribbles that I had written down for today. It's been a fantastic conversation, mate, one that I really enjoyed. Probably love to pick up again moving forward once the book's out, and we'll talk about that as well. Mate, it's been exceptional. So once again, I really appreciate having me, and thanks for coming on.
Mate, thank you. It's a pleasure. Cheers, mate.
Cool.